Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to Woodbridge, the best town around. My name is John McCormick. I'm the mayor of this great town, and we're here today for a very momentous occasion of welcoming several people from Trenton to Woodbridge to share in the success of this project. First, I want to say Happy Earth Day to everyone. I would also like to welcome all these youngsters, these boys and girls that are getting a day off of school. You need a day off of school, right? You've been in school for so long. But they're here today to witness their moms and their dads in action. And what you're witnessing is exactly the way government is supposed to work in the state of New Jersey. You've got the town of Woodbridge with the mayor's office and the town council. If you're not in fourth grade yet, that's the executive branch and the legislative branch. And you've got the state of New Jersey, all different departments, particularly the DEP. And you've got the governor's office here. And you've got the legislative branch represented. So this is exactly what's supposed to happen when government tries to get things done. This was an area that was devastated 8 years ago in Superstorm Sandy. The DEP came in, and I have to give special mention to Fawn McGee and her staff because she worked with us for the past 8 years and just was amazing. We had so many town meetings. Everybody was afraid. This is their livelihood. This was their home. They were getting destroyed all the time. Even when it didn't rain, if it was high tide and a full moon, this flooded because the water rose from the creek. So this was a very difficult area. And the DEP came in and with the Blue Acres program, bought 166 homes for $39 million, supervised the demolition, worked with us every step of the way, and all those people got the chance to sell their homes for fair value, and most of them stayed in Woodbridge, which is very fortunate. So this is an example of a total success story. I would be remiss if I didn't mention Rutgers University and Brooke Maslow. They became our partners and worked with us every step of the way for the past 8 years, and they're still working with us, and they're still taking homes down. One down the street just got taken down this week. So this is an ongoing problem, and I just want to thank everybody involved, the state of New Jersey, the DEP, Rutgers, and all of the town people. We have a couple of council people here, Elizabeth DeJesus and Vera Patel. We have our Chief of Staff, Carol Ehrlich, our Business Administrator, Vito Samaluka, our great Department of Public Works, which worked in this project for so long. We have Stacy, who works in emergency management, Patrick Kenny. Thanks to you to everybody to make this happen. I'd like to now introduce a young lady who has been very instrumental in the environmental cause in the state of New Jersey. From the very first day when her husband was sworn in as governor, Tammy Murphy has been a conscience for the environment. I can remember back going to seminars and meeting her, and she was presenting and she was organizing and helping and just doing so many great things for the state and for the environment. And then Carol and I accepted an award from her, the Energy Star Award program, a couple of years ago. She has just been a terrific voice in the state of New Jersey for the environment, and it gives me great pleasure for the first time in my career to ever introduce such an esteemed First Lady. Ladies and gentlemen, Tammy Murphy.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Great. All right. So, happy Earth Day. And given it is also Take Your Child to Work Day, I am thrilled that we have some young partners and future climate advocates with us today. So welcome to all of our younger generation. Mayor McCormick, thank you so much for your introduction and for welcoming us all to Woodbridge. It's an honor to be here with Acting Commissioner of the Department of Environmental Protection, Sean Monterette, and Director of the Council on the Green Economy, Jane Cohen, and her son Otto, and our partners in the legislature and the Environmental Protection Agency as we take another step forward to protect New Jersey from the threats of climate change. Climate change is the single greatest long-term threat currently facing humanity. And it's not happening in a far-off place. It's happening right here in New Jersey. In fact, because of our geographic location and our population density, responding to the reality of climate change is not a choice, it's absolutely a necessity. New Jersey is a living laboratory. We have dense cities, diverse rural communities, robust forests and parks, waterways, mountains, and aquifers bordered by our magnificent coastline. And it's impossible to ignore the more frequent and intense storms, rising sea levels, severe flooding, and extreme temperatures that we experience firsthand as a result of climate change. These adverse consequences affect our communities, our health, our economy, and our natural resources. Despite that, I am incredibly optimistic for our future and our ability to lead the nation in combating the climate crisis. Over the past several years, our administration has made many exciting announcements to position New Jersey at the forefront of the climate movement. We have set an ambitious goal of reaching 100% clean energy by the year 2050. We are building wind ports and offshore wind manufacturing facilities. We are the first, and so far only state in the nation, to incorporate climate change education across all K-12 learning standards. We have enacted the country's strongest environmental justice laws, and we have the newly formed Council on the Green Economy, which I have the honor of chairing and working alongside the incredible Jane Cohen, to ensure that every decision regarding climate action is made with a constant and unyielding focus on achieving equity. Every single one of these pieces fits together to address the impact of climate change here in New Jersey and to make us a national leader in our fight against the climate crisis. Today, we take another real step in that fight by establishing a roadmap to better protect us from these threats. The Climate Resilience Strategy shows that we can and must work together to protect our present and our future. None of this would be possible without the responsible and effective leadership that we've shown so far. I am so grateful to the incredible team we've assembled at the Department of Environmental Protection and across government, agencies, and industries to help us in this effort. And on that note, it is now my honor to introduce one of our greatest partners and my friend, Assemblywoman Yvonne Lopez. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, First Lady Tammy Murphy. I appreciate your kind words. Good morning, everyone, and happy Earth Day. Just imagine, yesterday we had 65-degree weather, and today we're sitting here 30-degree weather. I look forward to touring the Blue Acres site in Woodbridge and seeing the incredible work of the New Jersey DEP in action. Today is Earth Day, and after a year of devastating wildfires, brutal hurricanes, and record-setting winter storm events, I think we can all agree that climate change policy and green initiatives must remain a priority in New Jersey and in this country. The theme of this year's Earth Day is Restore Our Earth. And I can say that New Jersey has certainly remained a committed leader in the innovative strategies and policies needed to restore and reverse the ongoing toll of climate change. New Jersey is not immune to the effects of climate change, and our communities are already being impacted by increasing temperatures, rising sea levels, and more intense storm events. Touring today's Blue Acres site, I am not only reminded of the devastation Hurricane Sandy wrought on our communities throughout the district, but more importantly, I'm reminded that we need to do everything in our power to protect New Jersey from climate change. As the former vice chair of the Assembly Environmental and Solid Waste Committee, I can attest to the amazing work the legislature has performed on addressing climate change head-on. And I'm glad that the DEP remains committed to complementing this work through initiatives like the Robust Climate Change Resiliency Strategy, a strategy that undoubtedly will strengthen our resilience and preparedness for generations to come. On Earth Day, I'm thankful that New Jersey remains grounded in science and committed to a future of sustainability. We continue to make progress as a state, but there's still work to be done. We all have a role in protecting our state, and our planet, and through collaboration, we can defend the beauty of the Garden State for years to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Now it gives me great pleasure to introduce, I guess, a Woodbridge native. He lived here for a long, long time, went to school here. Some of his family still lives here. We met several weeks ago, breakfast at the famous Rio Diner, where he came out and we talked about some of the projects in town that we had accomplished. We talked about some of the projects in town that we had going on, and Acting Commissioner of the DEP, Sean LaTourette, really understands that you can have economic development with environmental protection, and that is so important. I go back and we talked about a project 8 years ago in town with 100 acres of very contaminated soil on the Casby waterfront, the Raritan River, and that turned into 40 acres, became a power plant, 60 acres became a waterfront park, and that probably will open next year. So those are the kind of things that I know that we got done years ago that we're still working on, that he understands, because he's got that great vision for what New Jersey can become, and he recognizes that everybody has to work together to protect the environment. We do need the cooperation of the business community. And then he spent a couple hours with us touring sites in Woodbridge while we showed him what's going on and what we needed help with. And I can't think of the last time I talked to a commissioner for 3 straight hours and had him or her out in town talking to us. It was just remarkable, and I want to thank him for that, and I'm really looking forward to the rest of my career with him as the commissioner of the DEP. Ladies and gentlemen, Sean LaTourette.
Well, thank you for that, Mayor. It is good to be home. And thank you, First Lady, to Jane Cohen, the Governor's Office of Climate Action and the Green Economy. Without your leadership, the two of you, we wouldn't be here today. We wouldn't be accomplishing all we are in New Jersey in the fight against climate change, both from the perspective of bringing down the emissions of greenhouse gases that further endanger us, particularly here in New Jersey, where we are ground zero for some of the worst impacts of climate change. But at the same time that we're working to reduce our emissions through great initiatives like offshore wind and deploying investments like the recent $100 million we poured into electric vehicles, particularly in environmental justice communities. Despite all of that hard work, we have to get ready for what is happening here today in our state and what we know is to come. I want to thank the mayor for his hospitality as always. And I want to thank Fawn McGee of DEP's Blue Acres program, because where we're standing right now is an example of how we build resilience. We need to look at our environment in a different way. And the report that we are releasing today, New Jersey's Climate Change Resilience Strategy, sets the framework for the conversations that we all need to engage in together, to look further down the road, to get better at doing that thing that we always say we'll do, but it's a little hard, which is to think about our kids and their kids and their kids, and make sure that what we're doing today, what we're building and how we're developing, how we're facilitating all of these great projects, finding that unity between economic development and environmental protection. We want to make sure that what we build stands the test of time, that it's here for all these young people. And we can do that, but we can only do it together. And so I'm grateful to have been a member of the Interagency Council on Climate Resilience established by Governor Murphy under Executive Order 89, and to have appointed the state's first Chief Resilience Officer in the person of Dave Rosenblatt, who will speak to us shortly about the Climate Change Resilience Strategy and the 6 key priorities that it lays out. This strategy is the beginning of the beginning. It sets 6 key priorities that we should organize our public discourse around, consider future legislation or policy change or regulatory changes that will help make New Jersey stronger, addressing issues like how do we promote coordinated governance? How do we build resilient coastlines? How can we make sure that we're deploying climate-informed investments so that what we build today can stand the test of time, so that we don't have to buy out repeatedly flooded areas. Because we are a strong state, we are a smart people. We have tackled many a challenge, and we will tackle this one as well. But we will only do it together. So to describe how we're going to go about that, it is my pleasure to introduce the state's Chief Resilience Officer, Dave Rosenblatt.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thanks to Mayor McCormick for hosting this event and our many partners here that are here to support us. This important announcement. As New Jersey's Chief Resilience Officer and Vice Chair of the Interagency Council on Climate Resilience, I'm very pleased to join the Commissioner in presenting the draft Climate Resilience Strategy, which is now on DEP's website. I'm very grateful for the collaboration of all the members of the Interagency Council. The first iteration of the Resilience Strategy is the structure that will support and direct the public discourse we will need to further the state's adaptation to climate change. The proposed actions are the first of many that will need to be developed by state agencies with public input. Lots of public input. We look forward to implementing the actions, evaluating our progress, and having the public share in the process. In the strategy, the Council outlines 6 state priorities, each of which include policy actions to guide state agencies' efforts to protect people, structures, business, and the environment. It also addresses important policy and regulatory changes necessary to strengthen New Jersey against today's climate threats. These priorities, 1 through 6. 1, build resilient and healthy communities. I mean, that's what it's all about, right? Making sure our communities, our people, are secure against the impacts of climate change. Every municipality will be encouraged to integrate climate change into local planning, regional transportation planning, hazard mitigation, housing, and other infrastructure planning. 2, strengthen the resilience of New Jersey's ecosystems, not just for the intrinsic value they have, but also for the ways they help us with flood control management, the reduction of impacts from coastal storm surges, if you're talking about marine wetlands. 3, promote coordinated governance. All right, we have 565 municipalities. It'll be great if they're all pushing and pulling in the same direction with the same knowledge, with the same intent. So we're going to spend a lot of time working with municipalities, counties, regional government agencies, and in fact all the agencies in the state too, to make sure we are doing just that, pushing, pulling the same direction. Invest in information and increase public understanding. This is, of the 6, this may be one of the foundations of what we're doing. The public has to understand the science of climate change if they're ever going to understand the policies that we're going to enact, the changes that may impact their regular lives, the routine businesses. So we want to spend a lot of time with the public, making sure they understand the science. The first science report that we published was last summer. The Scientific Report on Climate Change. It's on our website, and we've been encouraging everybody at every opportunity. If you can't read the 200 pages, read the 10-page executive summary. It's very good, concise, and that's really what you need to know. 5, expand resilience funding and financing. Well, this is not always going to be cheap. There's going to be money involved. But before we get to that, what we have to do is make sure that the money we're spending now as state agencies, as government agencies, county and local, that the money we spend now has an eye towards the future. New Jersey is going to look and feel different as we move to 2100, which is our planning horizon for the resilience strategy. So we want to make sure that we're putting, again, the money in the right place. Places that are not going to be underwater if we have 5 feet of sea level rise by 2100, or 2 feet of sea level rise by 2050. We want to be very cognizant of that in all our decision making at this point. And 6, the Coastal Resilience Plan. The standalone document that Executive Order 89 signed by Governor Murphy wants as a standalone document, which it is, but it's also Strategy 6 of the Resilience Strategy. Take all the 5 strategy sets that I've talked about previously, and then focus them on the coastal area. That's what the Coastal Resilience Plan will look like. Why are we focused on the coast? Because of Sandy, because of the increased storms we expect to see in the near future because of climate change, and because of the threat that they pose every day that the coast has right now on us living in the coastal area. So it's the coast. The coast is always in our mind, probably because of Sandy, but it's the place where we're starting to see the impacts of climate change first. So this strategy is now online, available for public comment. I hope you'll join us in this continued collaboration by reviewing the strategy and providing your insight. As others have noted before, this requires collaboration and teamwork to truly protect New Jersey against climate threats. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd now like to introduce Jane Cohen, the Executive Director at the Governor's Office of Climate Action and the Green Economy.
Hope I can hold on to my papers here. Thank you, Mayor McCormick, for inviting us here on this perfect, balmy day. I'm so pleased to be here, especially with my partners and real leaders in the fight against climate change, First Lady Tammy Murphy and DEP Commissioner Sean LaTourette. And I see a lot of DEP staff out there, and just know that from the Governor's office, we are so appreciative of everything that you do to protect our environment every single day. There are a lot of stories out there about climate change, that it's something in the distant future, that it only impacts the coasts, that really it's just an environmental issue. As all of us who lived through Superstorm Sandy know, the effects of climate change are here now, and the science tells us that they're only getting worse. It's true that our coast will be hit hard by climate change, with at least 2 feet of sea level rise expected by 2050. But the impacts are not contained to the coasts. Between inland flooding, urban heat islands, and severe weather events, every New Jerseyan will feel the effects. The impacts to our environment, whether our rivers, our oceans, our forests, or our air, these affect our infrastructure, our economy, and ultimately, our people. And climate change, like virtually every other issue, has a disproportionate impact on our most vulnerable communities. Which brings us to why we're here today. As chair of the Interagency Council on Resilience, and with the leadership of DEP, we brought our state agencies together to work toward a future that is truly protective of our present and our future. The collaborative multi-agency approach to creating our strategy reflects the Murphy administration's commitment to leveraging all of our state agencies and resources to both protect against climate threats while also capitalizing on the opportunities our response to climate change presents. Investments in clean energy and environmental infrastructure create good paying jobs for New Jerseyans, and investments in climate resilience protect the long-term economic viability of our businesses and communities. The New Jersey Council on the Green Economy, chaired by First Lady Tammy Murphy and with Commissioner LaTourette as a co-chair, will help make sure that as we transition to a green economy, all New Jerseyans will reap the economic benefits. And as today is not only Earth Day, but also Bring Your Child to Work Day, my son here and Commissioner LaTourrette's daughter, and to all the children, let me say, years from now, we will be able to look you in the eyes and say, we knew and we acted. And 20 years from now, when it's your turn to stand up here and to try to make the world a better place, hopefully our actions today will mean that climate change is not what you're talking about. It will just be one more thing that we protected you from. I'd like to thank Acting Commissioner LaTourrette and our CRO, our Chief Resilience Officer, Dave Rosenblatt, for their leadership and their collaboration. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jane. Our last speaker is Anahita Williamson, the Senior Advisor at the Office of the Regional Administrator in the Environmental Protection Agency, Region 2.
Good morning and happy Earth Day. I have to say I am so happy to be at an in-person event, although my hands are frozen. And I do want to say especially happy Earth Day to all the little ones out here, all the children, because that's why I joined the EPA, to make the world more sustainable and better for all of you. So as mentioned, and thank you, Mayor, I'm Anahita Williamson, Senior Advisor in EPA Region 2, which serves New York, New Jersey, Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, as well as 8 federally recognized Indian nations. Thank you so much for inviting me to join you here. Thank you First Lady, Commissioner, and all the distinguished guests up here on the stage. I'm actually really looking forward to the tour after this event. Many of you may have heard that EPA is refocusing on climate change and on ways to combat it. This includes standing with New Jersey to address this state's vulnerabilities to the impacts of extreme weather, sea level rise and increased flooding, as well as supporting mitigation measures and green infrastructure. The threat of flooding and damage to infrastructure will continue to increase over time. And as we all know too well, higher sea levels combined with larger storm surges erode the shoreline and flood, contaminate, and damage property and put lives at risk. New Jersey is taking a leadership role in developing a statewide climate resilience strategy, which you just heard so much about. New Jersey's strategy and the Blue Acres program are important steps to improve climate resiliency across the state. The Blue Acres program, so effectively used here in Woodbridge, recognizes the need to create open space in the wake of devastating storms and hurricanes like Superstorm Sandy. Confronting climate change is a challenging task, but one that we can use as an opportunity to protect and strengthen our economy, create jobs, and build a healthier and more equitable future. At EPA, we strongly support working collaboratively with local and state partners to help communities become more resilient and adapt to the challenges that we face. And how fitting that today, on the very day when we remember the importance of our Earth and its climate, is the day that New Jersey DEP unveils their plan, not just to combat climate impacts into the future, but to make New Jersey more resilient now. Thank you, and have a great Earth Day, everyone.
Thank you very much, Anahita. Since you represent the U.S. Virgin Islands, maybe next year you can hook us up down there for Earth Day instead of here. I want to thank everybody for coming out. We are very proud of what we've accomplished here in Woodbridge. We love showing it off. I want to thank all of our team. We are the most sustainable town in New Jersey for 11 of the past 12 years. There's a whole lot of people here that are responsible for that. We're going to take a tour now. I want to make sure people know Brooke Maslow here. She's from Rutgers, and Tom Flynn from our office. Oh, there you are. Well, you look like her. Don't they look alike? It's not my fault. And Tom Flynn, our certified floodplain manager. Boys and girls, if you have any questions, these are people who are really smart and really know what they're doing. Please ask them, and you can learn a lot from them. So once again, I want to thank First Lady Tammy Murphy. I want to thank DEP Commissioner Sean LaTourrette, everybody from the state government, the federal government, and the local government for coming out to here today to celebrate Earth Day and to see what happens, as I said in the very beginning, when everybody works together for the common good of the people in the town, the people in the state. This is what happens. Thank you all very much.
So I think the first thing I want to do is bring Tom Flynn over here, because I really think that you know, this whole project, I think the mayor said it and all the speakers said it, it's really about collaboration and teamwork and interdisciplinary action. And so I think where I want to start really is what was mentioned throughout that entire press conference, which is about, understanding that climate change, especially here, right, it has real impacts in communities. And I think it takes a forward-thinking group of people to identify those problems and then to address those problems and to understand that those problems need to be addressed in a big way. And so I think that's where we're starting here. And I think what I'd like to do, and I know I have to get closer to Tom a little bit, so I'm going to put my mask back on, for him to just talk a little bit about the flooding landscape here as a sort of the local context.
Yeah, so thanks, Brooke. And thank everyone. Thank you so much for coming today, and thank you just for the interest and willingness to adapt and change over time. Right, that's what this is all about. So the flooding landscape where you're standing right now, the 1% annual chance flood comes up to an elevation of 13 feet above sea level. You're standing at about 5 to 6 feet above sea level. So just to give you kind of a ballpark of what you would see at the 100-year flood elevation, right? So, and again, kind of speaking again to the outreach, the education, the 100-year flood could happen back-to-back years, twice in the same year. For us, 2011, 2012, Irene, Sandy, right? So, just to kind of paint the picture of what a storm would look like here, we would all likely be inundated in that 1% annual chance flood. We're also standing in a coastal AE zone or extent of it. So limits of moderate wave action would hit the site at about 3 feet of wave action. So just to add to the overall flood impacts.
So I think you've heard sort of about the history of these buyouts, and so I think what I'd like to do is kind of walk through this former road, and then we'll stop at the next point, and then we can talk a little bit about some of the challenges that the town faced and how we address them. So Woodbridge took this proactive and forward-thinking approach of working with DEP Blue Acres. It's a bit windy. And so, this is a good place to stop, because I think that, a lot of the committees that I've been on, a lot of the workshops thinking about climate resiliency and community resiliency talks a lot about the buyouts, right? The coastal retreat and moving people out of harm's way. And so, I think this is a good backdrop for that conversation, because you kind of see this kind of checkerboarding and hodgepodge of what's going on. You have homes that are remaining within these flood-prone landscapes that are eligible for buyouts. You have homes that are being razed that have rejected those buyouts, and then you have places that accepted buyouts and then ultimately become demolished. And I think the challenge is that you're still within a community. You still have people that are just outside the floodplain that, this is what they look out their window every day and they see, right? And when we think about retreat, or we use that term retreat, I think it's difficult for people to accept, especially, as Americans, we don't want to retreat, right? And so I think for us coming in, the buyout is not the end game, right? It's only the beginning. And I think that's where Woodbridge and Rutgers really jived in our thinking, because when Rutgers came in and partnered with the town, what we said was, okay, let's characterize this landscape, let's see what the opportunities are, let's see what the challenges are, and let's put together a plan that's going to merge all of those things. And so it's a bit windy. We do have this board back at the stage, but this one is kind of giving you a sense of the 5 neighborhoods where the buyouts were concentrated in. And this is part of what Rutgers put together in our open space and floodplain restoration plan. And so the goals, I'm not going to hold it because it's not going to stay with me. That's okay. But the goals of that plan really were, number one, to recognize the importance of health and human safety, right? Get people out of harm's way and encourage that directive. but then to understand and increase the ecological function of these landscapes, to restore the biodiversity and the ecosystem services that come along with that. So things like, flood mitigation, increased infiltration, those kinds of things. And then importantly, and I think this is what really sets it apart, is understanding and appreciating the public amenity, right? Looking at these landscapes as newly adapted locations that then become park space, places for passive recreation, places that people can become connected with nature and to reimagine what this can be. And so that's what our concept plan really came to look like. So we developed that plan, and then Woodbridge took it one step further and said, okay, well, let's get it done. Let's implement this. And so I think what we're looking at here is, we had a series of different habitats. So we have floodplain forest, we have meadow habitat, we have wetland meadow or wet meadow. So wetland locations that are going to promote stormwater infiltration. And we had a lot of partners that came into play, so it's not just Rutgers and Woodbridge, but we had the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Partners for Fish and Wildlife Program. They donated plant material and technical services. They're here today somewhere. I don't see Mark Virgilio for U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services here. So plant donations, invasive species management, those kinds of things. And so we started to slowly restore parts of these areas, places that were available for restoration, right? Knowing that it's not one big construction zone. So I think what we're going to do now is hang a left here and walk down to some of our forest restoration area. It's happening in phases because houses are coming down in different years, right? There's different cycles of funding. There's different negotiations and things, and so I wasn't really a part of all of that. So what we get is what's coming down, and okay, what should we do with those areas, and how does that fit into our open space plan? And so in 2017, after we put in some of the meadow installations up there, which I'll talk about a little bit later, we put in about 1,000 native plants and shrubs to cover about 9 acres of forested habitat. And so what you see here, some of these species are pioneer species. This is just a salt marsh groundsel tree. So these things have sort of just come in. You can kind of see where I'm standing. These were houses, these were lots. And as we're walking through, you'll see the aprons of the driveways. You might see some leftover daffodils or just some other plantings or some trees that have been, on those properties. And so, another thing I want to stress about these types of restoration projects is that, you're not working in a pristine landscape. You're working with poor soils, fill, potentially some contamination, although that wasn't an issue here, but you have these types of challenges that you need to deal with. You have overabundant species like deer, Canada geese, right? Other herbivores. You have lots of things going on, and so I think it's important to stress that when you start a project like this, it's important to have that initial investment, right? A lot of times, and patience. I think when we think about development projects or things, I always call them insta-habitats, right? So you kind of roll out the sod and you put in the landscape scale trees, and then everything is done very quickly. And in these types of situations, it takes time to regenerate the soil. The scale at which you're planting things, you're starting with smaller plants, and so that requires a lot of tender loving care, so to speak. And so I have a project manager who's in the coveralls. She's handling the planting today. But Kathleen Kerwin really has been the one who's been out here every day handling all these things. So inside each of these tubes is a tree, a native tree or shrub that we planted. So again, these were in 2017. These tubes protect from deer browse. They also act like a greenhouse. And so, we plant the plant, we put the tree shelter in, and then we water for 3 years. We mulch around it. We come in every winter. We maintain these things. We clear them out, make sure they're standing up. And really what we've seen dividends. And as we walk through this forested restoration area, you'll see some places where the trees are starting to come out of those shelters. So a lot of these plants were donated by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And then in some lots, we're trying to maintain a connection with the community. And so the mayor is really big on Eagle Scouts and Girl Scout projects. And so these lots behind us were, the plants were procured by an Eagle Scout. They came in and we assisted them doing some invasive species management, and they came in then and supplementally planted these areas, and then we maintain them. And you can see in some spots, you know, the trees are starting to come out through the shelters. So I think what we'll do here is walk through this paper street. I would mention too that, you know, again, this is a landscape that it's not pristine, right? There's still roads, there's still the footprint of the roads. And so the water is coming down from upland, from the impervious surfaces upland. The Woodbridge River is, or at least part of it, is right behind here, right in front of the turnpike. If we walked in there, you'd get wet. And so, you know, in storms, I mean, you can see some of the damage here in the asphalt, but this area will flood. You know, it'll pool at least at the end of these streets, and that happens in a lot of these locations. And so what we're trying to do is add some other stormwater green infrastructure, if you will, things like rain gardens and bioswales and conveyance channels to allow that, to move that water and to keep residents flood free, if you will, and happy. This spring or fall, to talk to George, but the portion of this road should be coming out pretty quickly, and then we'll plant this. So the idea is to remove as much of that impervious surface as possible where we can. These are degraded landscapes, and so we spend a fair amount of time every year coming in and doing invasive species management. So coming in and either herbiciding or cutting things like barberry, and other things. We try to keep, again, residentials, like so American holly, for example, might be a residential planting. It's a native species, so we'll keep things like that. But we'll spend an awful lot of time getting rid of invasive vines and things, and we actually are quite surprised at the native seed bank that still exists here. And so in some of these areas that we sprayed or removed invasives, the very next year we had things like native boneset. It's a white flower that flowers in the fall, just emerge, and it's really a beautiful thing. And it's a shame that Earth Day is in April and not in May, because the flowers really, I mean, it's just beautiful here, and the abundance of wildlife that come back, it's really rewarding to see. This is where we started to create some designs that we want to really deal with the stormwater, right? We want to address the flooding. We're in a flood-prone landscape, so let's deal with some elevation gradients and things. And so if you're looking out this way, and we will walk through here, there is a natural yet degraded wetland back here. You can see all of the Phragmites, the common reed. And so when we get on the other side of it, what you'll see is there's a drainage ditch that excuse me, runs along the former Watson Avenue, and it makes a few 90-degree turns, and then it kind of empties into that wetland. And so what we're trying to do is restore the natural curvature of that swale. So we are going to allow the stormwater to come in. And then we have a series of depressions so the water will come through the swale, they'll fill in the first depression, and then so it'll kind of start to infiltrate. If there's more water, a bigger flood event, it'll then spill over to the next depression and the next depression, and ultimately make its way out back to the Woodbridge River. Again, this is, we're stopping here because this is one of the particular challenges of working in this type of landscape. So Blue Acres is extremely proactive in buying out properties, and they've been working with us to, if we target a specific property that might be part of one of our phases, excuse me, they will, they'll come in and target that particular spot. But then there are some holdouts. I'm really losing my voice now. There are some holdouts that make it really difficult for us to take action in certain areas. So, we have these lots here. You can see here the foundation of this property. Well, it doesn't have one anymore. It's an abandoned property, and yet it's eligible for funding, but it hasn't accepted a buyout, and so it's a challenge because it's in our project area. This one, we have the same type of issue, or it could be that a property is bank owned, or it's owned by an LLC, who's interested in perhaps flipping that property or something like that. And so there's different issues that we have to deal with. This particular house is right in the middle of our forested wetland project. And so, these are just kind of the things that we have to deal with and work around, and we have to think about some innovative solutions for addressing things like this. So this is probably a better look at the wetland, the wetland that we're dealing with here. And again, this is another challenge. Where you all are standing is a major gas line, and so can't really do anything about that for our restoration work. And so we kind of have to hopscotch over it to deal with this wetland project that we're working on. But the other thing that you can see, is that this house in particular, it's raised, so it's not going anywhere, but it's right next to the wetland, and we still have all of this, it's at a low point. As the water comes down, this residence driveway and the street right here floods on big storm events. And we speak with her quite a bit. Kathleen, again, my project manager, who's out here a lot, she has gotten to know a lot of the neighbors. And it's a real problem for this particular resident. And so these are the kinds of problems that we're trying to address in real time, while also dealing with kind of the bigger picture, right? We have kind of these combinations of things. So this is now permitted and ready for construction, I think, in the fall. And again, we have partners with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for donating plants. The Woodbridge Department of Public Works is going to be doing most of the grading, but the idea here, if you can envision, is going to be a forested wetland. So again, we've got this series of depressions that come through, but it's not going to look like a retention pond or a detention basin. It's going to look like a natural habitat. I'm sorry about walking. It was a little bit wetter than I thought it was, and I didn't want everybody to get all muddy as we walk through, so sorry for coming around. But what we're going to do now is walk along this just little property border, and then we'll head down the former Watson Avenue, and we'll get to some of our meadow plantings, and then we'll eventually get to where we're planting today. This was a portion of Watson Avenue. The DPW came and they took out the road. There were houses lining these sections here. These were all different lots. And I think this is an area that represents some of our largest contiguous restoration plots. And so what we did was we drill seeded our native meadow mix on either side, and we ran it all the way, all the way down. And again, it's early spring, but in midsummer, the vegetation is taller than I am, and it's milkweeds and it's pollinator habitat, and there's lots of birds and butterflies, and it's really beautiful. And I'm sorry, I forgot to mention this early on when we talked about some of the challenges with the remaining properties, but the township designated this area through an ordinance where there's no new construction allowed. And so if a property is to remain, like the one in the distance there, they have to elevate above the maps, the flooding maps, and in order for them to get the CO, they need to conform to all of these different things. So that has helped in a lot of ways. And so, again, with the funding coming through, there's been a lot more properties that are coming down. This is also because of the innovative nature of the project. We've learned a lot as well. So you can see we're standing on a former road. There isn't a lot of vegetation on this former road. And we've tried probably 3 separate times of planting here, and we still just cannot get things to grow. And some of that has to do with, again, the soils. They just don't, in the summertime it dries out quite a bit, and anything that we plant just dies. And another thing, if you look down, you can see a lot of tracks. A lot of that is ATV tracks. One year that people were still using it as a road, so cars and FedEx trucks and things were still driving through. And so these are the types of things that we have to deal with. And so one way in which we are doing that now is, 5 years into this project or 6 years into this project, is we're now ready to invite the public back in, to make this that public amenity that we talked about as one of our goals. And so back at the stage, we talked about connecting a greenway for the entire Woodbridge River floodplain. We call it the Woodbridge River Passage, and we've created this conceptual plan, and now we're going to start phasing it in, and this is going to be the first implementation phase, the Watson-Crampton Trail. And so we will have a trail that's going to come through some Woodbridge-owned sites down there, and then it's going to have a trail that actually comes through the road here, so that we can encourage and direct the traffic. So invite it in and tell it where to go, tell people where to go. And then we're going to have things like interpretive signs that we've created, explaining to people the value of nature, and that's really what our signs are designed to show, and also explaining the history of the floodplain and why it's important that we're restoring it and climate resiliency. So I think the last few spots that I'd like to go is we're going to head down this road. We'll just take a quick look at our planting, and then we'll walk back to the stage. Obviously, this is restoration work in action, and again, this takes partnership and collaboration and excitement and passion for the environment. So these guys are part of the Rutgers student chapter of the Wildlife Society, and there's a few of my graduate students from my lab and my daughters. And so what we're doing today, so this is a former lot, 2 former lots, and so we're planting today about 275 native trees and shrubs here, and then in a few other locations throughout the neighborhood. What we're doing where this 18-wheeler cab is, so that because the last houses are over there, we're actually going to take this road out. In the summertime, you would see that the water pools right at the end of the road, because it is there's a bit of a lip, so it kind of collects here. And there's actually cattails growing in the street. So we're going to remove the road, and we're actually going to make an L-shaped rain garden here, similar to the forested wetland, but it's going to just convey that water into that swale that we walked past. And so this way, it's mitigating that flooding for these residents as they're coming through. And then this will be one of the trailheads, so you can walk down the street and hop onto the Watson-Crampton Trail, and then make your way all the way up to the Ernie Oros Preserve in Avenel if you wanted to. After the tour, if anybody wants to stick around, we got lots of trees to plant. Okay, so what we're going to do now is just cross the street here, and we'll make our way back to the podium. And I'm just going to make one more stop, and then otherwise enjoy the walk.
Now with Brooke Maslow's 2 kids, Arden and Cadis. And Arden, tell us what you learned today.
I learned that, I don't know.
Oh, come on.
Come on, you live with an environmentalist. You got to know, you got to learn something here.
What did you learn about climate change today?
I learned about that in the summer, the water comes all the way up over there.
Right.
And what are we doing to fix that?
We put trees, because if there was no trees or plants here, the whole thing would just flood and ruin all those houses. And so that's why we put trees here for the trees to suck up the water.
Oh wow! Listen to that.
Good for you, kiddo.
You're a superstar. Where's
Cadis?
Cadis.
Go, Cadis is busy working. Good job, Cadis. No time to chat, apparently.
Film that. That's good. Look at that. That's cool. This thing is bigger than her.
You need some help, kid?
I think you should mention also, Mac, the fact that the women have their kids and they're working.
Yeah.
Girl power.
That's right.
Like, that's huge.
That's right.
All these women with their kids on their laps and they're still doing the work.
Good point.
Talk about resilience, right?
You're right. Yeah, absolutely. Especially through COVID, right?
Yeah.
Good job, kid. Good job.
On behalf of the Department of Environmental Protection, to Brooke for your tour, to Mac for your leadership, and for having us here in Woodbridge once again, to the Speaker, Assemblywoman Lopez, thank you all for having us, and we look forward, at least at DEP I can say, we look forward to continuing projects like this and looking at ways that we can build the type of connectivity between green spaces that I know Mayor McCormick is so focused on through all the different levers that we have, whether we're talking about Blue Acres buyouts or Green Acres funding or grants through urban parks like the RFP that we just opened up 2 weeks ago. We can do more of this great work together. So thank you all for being here today, and Happy Earth Day.
Happy Earth Day. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. This was, yeah. And come back next year when we have a trail. Okay.